Erik Erikson, a presentation by Virginia Hamilton. As discussed in lecture, Erikson's early development consisted of a Danish mother and a German-Jewish stepfather that was a pediatrician. He was bullied a little bit because he did not look Jewish. In late childhood, his parents revealed to him that he was adopted, which he was bitter about for a long while. His stepfather wanted him to follow in his footsteps to become a pediatrician, but after receiving a solid classical education, Erikson decided to nurture his artistic talent and pursued a Wanderer from his late teens until he was about 25. Wanderer means an artistic journey. The woman pictured here is Dr. Freud's daughter, Anna. In Vienna, she had become close to a wealthy American heiress, Dorothy Tiffany Burlingham, who needed a tutor for her 4 children. Erik Erikson was first hired to sketch the children, but then took over their tutoring from Mr. Bloss. Erik impressed the children and women both with his confidence. Erik Erikson met his wife at a masquerade in 1929. Her name is Joan Sursum. They moved in together and they fell in love, and shortly after finding out that they were pregnant, they married. She was Episcopalian, did not like Anna Freud, and did not know if she believed in psychoanalysis. However, she did support her husband, which made changes in him that may not have otherwise been possible. After living in a very tense political climate, the Eriksons decided to move to America. He received many offers of prestigious employments, including Harvard Psychological Institute, another position with Yale, as well as UC Berkeley. He always butted heads because he was new and inventive and building on top of the doctor of psychology, Sigmund Freud's theories. Even though he butted heads, he gained popularity on the West Coast and people were competing for him. And in 1949, he was offered a full professorship, even though he had no formal education, at the UC Berkeley. Erikson's views toward women changed over time. His writings used masculine pronouns, creating a naturally male bias. And he never necessarily said that Sigmund Freud was wrong for his views toward women. He just did not agree with something such as the Oedipus complex. He believed that women were able to be sexual, yet still be able to maintain class. Erik Erikson was far more favorable toward religion than others because he applied it toward child development. He saw it as an integral part. He differed from the Freudians because they viewed, although he was one, Freudians viewed religious rituals much as a neurotic obsession, whereas Erikson believed that they were inherent to child development. His theory sees ritual as a form of religious activity that is an inherently adaptive activity. He believes that religion is a human ritual behavior rooted in our life cycles. More precisely, the first 4 stages are the ontological stages of the major elements of human ritualization within his theory. The major elements of all social ritualizations, including religious rituals, are experienced in infancy and childhood. Like Freud and many others, Erik Erikson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order and builds up upon each other as it progresses. This is called the epigenetic principle. As previously mentioned, he is a stage theorist. Development occurs, according to Erikson, occurs in 8 stages over the lifespan, and each stage brings us a new crisis, but there are balancing poles for hopefully favorable outcomes. They are the oral sensory, which is experienced from 0 to 2. This states that from birth to 1 year, children must begin to learn to trust based on the ability and the consistency of their caregivers. Stage 2 is the muscular anal stage. Between ages of 1 and 3, children begin to assert independence by walking away from their mother, picking which toy to play with, making which choices about what to wear. Stage 3 is the locomotor genital. Stage 4 is adolescence. Stage 5 is young adulthood. Stage 6 is middle adulthood. And stage 8 is late adulthood. Infancy is a very important theory in Erikson's stage theory. This is an important theory because an important stage because this is when trust and mistrust is established. It is very important because it lays the groundwork to be a functional adult. It states that from birth to 1 year, children begin to learn the ability to trust others based upon consistency of their caregivers. If trust develops successfully, the child gains confidence in the security in the world around him and is able to feel secure even when threatened. However, unsuccessful completion of this stage can result in an inability to trust and therefore a sense of fear about the inconsistent world around them. It may result in anxiety, heightened insecurities, and a feeling of mistrust around them as adults. So personality, can it be changed? Erikson suggests that there's still plenty of room for continued growth and development throughout a person's life. Erikson put a great deal of emphasis on the adolescent period, feeling it was a crucial stage of development for a person's identity. However, he did believe that personality development ended at age 20, but this could be because he did not receive a higher education. So what makes his ideas novel and interesting? Well, first and foremost, let's put it out there. It's interesting because he has no formal education, and he deserves credit as his ideas and theories have had a major impact on today's child development and human development fields. They're in sync with diversity, and he acknowledged that his stages and dilemmas would manifest themselves differently in all different cultures and have the ability to greatly assist all people of all ages to understand the connections between life experiences and human behavior, and particularly how adults can help rather than hinder a child's development. He also developed the idea of the identity crisis. This occurs rarely, but it does happen during stage 7 in identity versus stagnation when it is not successfully completed. Because Erik Erikson did not find out until his late childhood that he was not biologically related to his father, I assume that hindered his sense of self, considering he was upset about it. However, because it occurred during this particular stage in his life, late childhood, just before adolescence, Erikson continued on to explore new independence as illustrated by nurturing his artistic capabilities instead of following his footsteps, the footsteps of his stepfathers in the medical sciences. Now to get a little personal. According to Erikson's theory, I am stuck in stage 6. I'm 29 years old, and that theory ends before that age. This is because during the oral sensory stage, which is stage 1, basic trust was not established via consistent caregivers in my life. Because the first stage was not successfully completed, I have an inability to trust, and therefore I have a sense of fear about the inconsistent world around me. I do have a heightened anxiety level, especially because sometimes I feel if I have an inability to allow people into my emotionally vulnerable areas. This brings me back to stage 6 of Erikson's development. I am currently unable to complete it as I have failed relationships as a consequence of basic mistrust. I tend to isolate and withdraw rather than having to interact in social situations. Again, I'm also 29 and I'm still working on my bachelor's degree. As far as a loved one, Erikson would tell me that this particular person, whom is 51, is in the stage of generativity versus stagnation, which is stage 7. She was a heavy drug user starting at a very young age, at age 15, and currently has 7 years clean and sober. She dropped out of the 10th grade and never returned to school. Now that she is drug and alcohol free, at 51, this person has what seems like hundreds of ideas for her life, things that she wants to do. However, she does not act upon any of them and has become very unproductive. Because this stage has such a large age range, 25 to 64, she still has time to successfully complete it, so she does not experience despair. It's stage 8 of his developmental theory. So, how do Freud and Erikson compare, as well as differ? Sigmund Freud's psychosexual theory and Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory are two very well-known theories of development. While Erikson was influenced by Freud's ideas, Erikson's theory differs in a number of many important ways. Like Freud, Erikson believed that personality develops in a series of predetermined stages. Unlike Freud's theory of psychosexual stages, Erikson's theory describes the impact of social experience across the entire lifespan. In the diagram provided, some main points are summarized. There was one major difference between Erikson and Skinner that should be understood. Skinner focused on operational conditioning, in that he believed behavior was learned and reinforced through environment, whether positive or negative. And Erikson's theory involved a series of conflicts a person needs to move through in order to develop successfully in life. Failure to pass through his conflicts with a positive outcome meant that the person would form their opinion of the world around the conflict experienced. Erikson had some major impacts in the field of development. He developed the theory of an identity crisis that not all experience, but some do in middle adulthood. That usually falls in line with stagnation, which leads to unproductivity. He was the first child play therapist to be recognized. He's conducted numerous social change studies, racial tension studies, and not to ever be left out, he developed the 8-stage psychosocial development theory. And here's my bibliography. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation.